Filipino English was once the subject of jokes, misunderstandings, and dismissive remarks. For decades, many people around the world saw it as a rough, awkward version of English that didn't quite fit into the polished standards of American, British, or Australian speech. The global community poked fun at the way Filipinos spoke, focusing on the rhythm, the intonation, and the unique blend of local influences that shaped the dialect. It was treated as a quirky offshoot, something amusing, and sometimes even seen as incorrect. Many people, especially those outside the Philippines, thought of Filipino English as broken, a language somewhere between what they considered proper English and the everyday speech of ordinary Filipinos. They didn't see the value, the clarity, or the potential that lay within it. They didn't understand that what they were hearing wasn't broken English. It was a linguistic evolution in progress, a form of communication shaped by history, adaptation, and cultural resilience. Over time, that very same dialect that once drew laughter and casual mockery transformed into something deeply respected on the global stage. Today, Filipino English is not only widely accepted, it is one of the most important voices in global communication, especially in industries that require clarity, precision, and emotional intelligence. What was once dismissed has now become the trusted language of the skies, the warm voice greeting millions of passengers across continents every single day. But this transformation didn't happen overnight, nor did it happen by accident. The story of how Filipino English rose from ridicule to global prominence is one rooted in history, shaped by colonial transitions, and strengthened by a country's ability to adapt and redefine itself in a constantly changing world. To understand the evolution of Filipino English, one has to travel back to the late 19th century when a significant shift in Philippine history took place. In 1898, after the Spanish-American War, the Philippines was ceded to the United States. This transfer of power marked not just a political shift, but also the beginning of a profound linguistic transformation. Under American rule, English was introduced as the new medium of instruction in schools. Teachers from the United States came to the Philippines carrying American textbooks, American teaching styles, and American speech patterns. Filipino children grew up learning math, science, literature, and history entirely in English. This exposure allowed the language to embed itself deeply into Philippine society, not just as a foreign language, but as a practical tool for education and communication. Over time, English became intertwined with the local languages spoken across the islands. Filipino students learned English while still speaking Tagalog, Cebuano, Ilocano, Kapampangan, Hiligaynon, Waray, and dozens of other languages at home. This combination created a unique linguistic blend. The sentence structures, rhythm, and sound of English in the Philippines were inevitably influenced by the native tongues of the people. Even Spanish, which had shaped Filipino culture for more than 3 centuries, left a subtle but lasting mark on the way Filipinos pronounced certain English words. The result wasn't American English, and it wasn't British English. It became something distinct, Filipino English, clear, direct, melodic, and shaped by a culture that values warmth and approachability. But this distinctiveness wasn't appreciated at first. For much of the 20th century, Filipino English was not taken seriously on the global stage. People outside the Philippines saw it as an imperfect imitation of Western English. Many Filipinos themselves grew self-conscious about their accent, believing that only American or British English sounded truly correct. Yet, in ways no one expected, this unique speech pattern would soon find its place as one of the most effective and globally understood forms of English communication. As the 20th century drew to a close, the world was rapidly entering an era of globalization. Technology was advancing, communication systems were becoming interconnected, and companies were searching for efficient ways to expand across borders. By the 1980s and 1990s, major corporations in the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia began to explore outsourcing as a strategy to cut operational costs. They needed workers who could communicate in English, handle customer concerns, and deliver services around the clock. The Philippines quickly emerged as the ideal destination. The country was filled with college-educated, hard-working, culturally adaptable individuals who had been speaking English for most of their lives. Filipino workers were polite, patient, and able to understand Western cultural references due to decades of American influence. More importantly, their accent, once a source of laughter, turned out to be one of their greatest strengths. When international companies tested Filipino English for customer service roles, they discovered something unexpected. Filipino English was neutral. It didn't have the strong regional accents found in many other parts of the world. It didn't come with heavy intonations that confused non-native speakers. It didn't present the barriers that other dialects sometimes did. Filipino English had a natural clarity, a balanced rhythm, and a gentle tone that made it easier for callers from all over the world to understand. This clarity became a defining characteristic of Filipino English. Companies from technology, finance, healthcare, and retail began outsourcing their customer support operations to the Philippines. The call center industry exploded. Entire business districts sprang up in cities like Makati, Ortigas, Manila, Cebu, and Davao. Night shifts became a normal part of Filipino life as workers handled calls from New York, London, and Sydney. The more they practiced, the more polished their English became, and the more global industries trusted Filipino communication. The world slowly realized something profound. Filipino English was not broken. It was efficient, neutral, adaptable, and globally intelligible. It was exactly the kind of English the world needed. As the outsourcing boom continued into the 2000s, Filipino workers gained more experience in handling international clients. They were trained to speak clearly, enunciate every instruction, and communicate with empathy. The Philippine service culture, known for being warm, patient, and accommodating, blended perfectly with the clarity of Filipino English. It didn't take long before this linguistic strength caught the attention of another industry, one where communication is not just important, but essential for safety, coordination, and global travel. The aviation industry began searching for accents and dialects that passengers from all language backgrounds could understand easily. Airlines needed speech patterns that minimized confusion, especially when delivering safety instructions, emergency procedures, or time-sensitive announcements. Once again, Filipino English emerged as the ideal solution. Filipino flight attendants had long been recognized around the world for their professionalism, hospitality, and pleasant demeanor. Airlines valued their discipline, courtesy, and attention to detail. But there was something else that set them apart, their clear and neutral English. When a Filipino flight attendant spoke during a pre-flight briefing, passengers could understand every word, whether they were from East Asia, the Middle East, North America, or Europe? Unlike English spoken with thick regional accents, which could be difficult for global passengers to follow Filipino, English maintained a smooth, universally intelligible flow. It didn't matter whether a passenger spoke English well or barely understood it. The distinct but gentle tone of Filipino English made vital messages easy to follow. As a result, airlines began hiring more Filipino cabin crew, not just for their service skills but for their communication strengths. Major carriers across Asia, the Middle East, and Europe relied heavily on Filipino flight attendants for English language announcements. Philippine Airlines, Cebu Pacific, and AirAsia Philippines adopted Filipino English as their go-to dialect for in-flight communication. Even foreign airlines noticed the value of Filipino English and made it a standard for training multilingual cabin crews. In aviation, clarity is everything. Safety instructions cannot afford to be misunderstood. Announcements must be heard clearly by passengers of all backgrounds. Filipino English delivered that clarity perfectly. Its melodic yet neutral tone made it pleasant to hear even during long flights. Its smooth pronunciation reduced the chances of misinterpretation. Its rhythm allowed even non-native English speakers to keep up without feeling overwhelmed. What once sounded different to the world now sounded reliable. What once was mocked as funny now represented professionalism. What once was considered imperfect became a global standard for clarity. Filipino English had finally claimed its place among the most respected forms of English used in international communication, and the influence didn't stop in the skies. As Filipino English continued to rise in aviation, it became a powerful asset in other global industries. Filipino nurses, caregivers, engineers, hotel workers, seafarers, and teachers brought their communication skills to every part of the world. Filipino universities attracted international students who wanted to study in a country where English was widely spoken but easier to understand. Governments and companies abroad invested in the Philippines because communication barriers were minimal. The country became one of the largest English-speaking nations on the planet, home to a workforce whose clarity and warmth made them invaluable in the global economy. Looking back, the transformation of Filipino English is nothing short of remarkable. A language once dismissed has evolved into a symbol of resilience and global competence. It is proof that ridicule does not determine destiny. It is proof that identity can be shaped into strength. Filipino English is now part of what defines the Philippines in the world. It stands as a reminder that language is not just about grammar or pronunciation. It is about connection. It is about bridging cultures. It is about making sure that no one is left confused or unheard. Today, Filipino English is the language of the call centers that keep businesses running, the voice of healthcare workers comforting patients, abroad the friendly tone of hotel staff welcoming tourists, the clarity of teachers guiding foreign students, and most importantly, the calm, reassuring sound echoing through aircraft cabins before takeoff and during landing. Filipino English is the voice that reaches travelers at 35,000 feet. It is the voice that explains safety protocols. It is the voice that connects continents. It is the voice that unites passengers from different languages, cultures, and backgrounds. And so, the story of Filipino English is not simply a story about language. It is a story about rising above judgment. It is a story about rewriting perceptions. It is a story of a country that took what the world mocked and turned it into a global asset. Today, Filipino English is no longer a punchline. It is a standard of clarity, a symbol of global professionalism, and a source of national pride. It represents the Philippines as a nation that listens, adapts, and speaks to the world with confidence. It is a reminder that the voice once laughed at has now become the trusted voice of the skies. And as millions of passengers continue to hear that clear, calm, unmistakable Filipino accent echo through aircraft cabins around the world, they are not just listening to instructions. They are hearing history. They are hearing resilience. They are hearing the sound of a nation that turned its voice into its power. Filipino English has risen far above the clouds of criticism. Today it flies higher than ever, guiding the world one announcement at a time. And so as the world continues to move, connect, fly, and cross new frontiers, one voice remains constant in the global soundscape. A voice once underestimated, once ridiculed, once dismissed as imperfect, now stands as one of the clearest signals of unity in an increasingly divided world. It echoes in airports, in control towers, in flight cabins, cruising above oceans and continents. It guides travelers through turbulence, welcomes them to new destinations, and delivers the words that matter most when clarity can save lives. It is the voice shaped by history, strengthened by resilience, soft by warmth, and refined by the collective spirit of millions. Filipino English did not rise by imitation. It rose by evolution. It rose by necessity. It rose because a nation dared to embrace its own identity in a language once foreign, transforming it into something unmistakably its own. Today, every announcement, every safety instruction, every calm reminder spoken at 35,000 feet is more than communication. It is a testament that greatness can emerge from the very things the world once misunderstood. A testament that what people mock can one day become what people depend on. A testament that the Philippines, through its voice, has carved a place in global aviation that no one can ignore. Filipino English is no longer merely a dialect. It is a symbol of clarity, a symbol of trust, a symbol of global connection. And as long as aircraft continue to rise into the sky, carrying passengers from every corner of the earth, this voice will remain steady, confident, unmistakably Filipino. It will continue to bridge cultures, calm fears, deliver safety, and remind the world that language is not defined by perfection, but by power, purpose, and the ability to unite. This is the journey of Filipino English, from ridicule to respect, from doubt to dominance, from the ground to the skies. And as the world listens, one thing becomes unmistakably clear. This voice is here to stay. This voice is ready for the future. This voice born in the islands, shaped by history, strengthened by resilience, is now one of the most trusted voices on earth. This is Filipino English, the voice of clarity, the voice of connection, the voice of the skies.